I'm very excited about this. Some of the most successful startups had a rocky start and had to readjust their thoughts on strategy, market, and products to make it work. How do you know when you need to review your plans and at what costs? We chat to some entrepreneurs who learned the hard way exactly what it takes to turn obstacles into opportunities. Let's do this. Tom Fels, hi brother.
I'm excellent. How are you?
So, founder of CEO of Animarem.
That's right.
What does Animarem mean? Like it's because when I read it, I was panicking, but I got it.
You did get it. So it actually is a Latin construct. It's a combination of the words anima, which means to animate or to give life, and rem means purpose.
Oh,
so it means to give life to purpose.
Oh, so you are the founder and CEO, a business consulting service. You connect people to powerful, purposeful ideas that grow businesses and consciousness and lead sustainable change.
That's it.
That's a
It's
lot
a
of pressure.
mouthful.
That is a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Well, it's a calling.
Yes. Explain it to me. Explain it to me like as layman as possible.
So I believe that business has the potential of being a force for good in society. I think actually that given where we are in the world, we can't really leave it to governments or civil society to shift the status quo.
Hallelujah.
And so I think business is the lever. It's like brands create culture. Business is a generator of value. The more inclusive we can be with that value, the better it's going to be for society and humankind. And so I'm seeing this amazing catalytic power of business being the thing that should define our generation. And my work is to make that change real.
So when you mean business, you don't mean someone waking up in the morning and just going to work. You're not just talking about just going to work. You mean business in the broader scheme of things, not just, I'm at work, I'm going home. When you say business, what do you mean? Because some businesses work different.
So companies, yeah.
Okay.
So based on your orientation as a business, and this is really like, it's a lot to do with leadership. So you can choose to employ people to go to work to do a very routine, root job where there's no real joy, engagement, development, exposure. Or you can choose to run a company that has this like incredible vitality where the culture is driving things forward. We're developing people. We're thinking about innovative ways to do things that are better for society, better for the environment. And those companies I'm seeing as the ones that are like reshaping what business should look like and will look like in the future. And so it's not just about business as this weird globular mass. It's like individual companies make up what business is or make up what the economy is. And so individual business leaders have the choice to shift the way that they think about what their business means in society. I want to tell you something that I think is pretty neat. When you register a business, it's literally you register it and you have like a document that says this is a business, right? And think about accelerate, let's say 10 years into a brand like Nike. So Nike was just, here's a business, it's registered, it's called Nike.
Just do it.
Just do it. Everything that happened from then on defined what Nike means in the world. How they go about supply chains, how they go about culture, how they go about innovation. And so we think about like, we give a vision, a purpose, values to business, and that makes it almost human.
It's a personality.
It's a personality.
Yeah.
So what are the personalities of business that will define what business will look like in the future?
So I haven't even started asking a question just yet, where the podcast hasn't begun. But as you walked into the door, the first thing I said to you is, you are too friendly to be from Cape Town. So you've got a very engaging personality and we just want to be able to talk to you. Do you think that's one of your most important traits to be able to do this kind of work? Apart from you having great teeth. I'm not used to people having better teeth than me, but that's another conversation on its own. Tom, who's your dentist? Do you think that's one of your most important traits in this particular thing? Because you're very engaging, you're easy to talk to, you're able to find these nuanced ways of being able to talk to people and humans. Is that one of your powers?
I think trust is one of my powers. So I had a long history in advertising and marketing leadership, and I had a really successful new business conversion rate. And I was,
what does that mean for the people who
so
don't
you're
understand?
pitching out there for new business, you're meeting new clients, and I had probably like quite an astronomical conversion rate of like, well, we went to go meet a client, we pitched our credentials, and we'd get the work. And yes, it's about representing a good company with great people who can do fantastic work, but there's something I think inherent in myself which allows people to trust me. And in giving someone vulnerably your work, you want to be able to trust whoever it is who's going to be the guardian of that team, of that work, etc. And so I guess I come from a good place, and that allows people to trust me easily, and I don't misuse that trust.
So I can see you married. The person you married, do they believe the same thing? How long have you been married?
Don't ask me that question. 2011, 13 years.
I'm just kidding. Okay, let's begin.
I hope my wife believes the same thing. Indeed.
Okay. Why entrepreneurship?
So for me, it was a calling.
Hallelujah.
I spent time in leadership positions. I ended up at quite a young age leading a multinational conservation tourism business. And I always felt like there was something more for me. And particularly having seen the blueprint of that business, the fact that it was like people, planet, profit, they were interwoven. And I thought, this can work anywhere. So I spun out effectively, and if I could have found a job that would help me do that work easily, I would have. So it became almost like a de facto requirement. Like, I've got this calling. I want to do this work that's change-making, that's shape-shifting. I can't find a place to do it, so I'm going to have to do it myself. And that was a necessary result of the work, but I think what it's done is it's empowered me with this incredible sense of independence and the ability to live my passions in work and to create the change that I really want to see.
Okay. Here's another question. What is the change from leading a scale business to becoming a founder? What is the change? What changed?
In a word, humbling. You go from having a title where people are wanting to come and see you, to schedule time with you, sometimes with a personal assistant who's going to help block and redirect those things, to being the person who's trying to make the appointments, right? And with no title. I mean, I was fortunate to have probably good credentials, but for people who in businesses I'd never engaged with previously, there was a real sense of like, well, who is this? And so you've gone from a place of feeling by virtue of your role quite important to feeling like you need to earn your importance, which is a real humbling lesson 20 years into your career. So that was one thing. The second lesson for me was you need to be able to like roll your sleeves up and do it all yourself. As an entrepreneur, if you're not going to do it, it's not going to happen.
No.
And so you need to be this like expert generalist. You need to be able to like manage your finances and your new business pipeline. You need to be able to market and profile yourself. You need to be able to deliver the services, build your network. And so where many business leaders get almost pigeonholed, like I'm the CMO or I'm the chief sustainability officer or I'm the CEO, and like that's their discipline. You need to be multidisciplinary. And I've always liked hard work, and so I didn't shy away from it. But it's a real lesson. You take on a lot of stuff that you didn't expect you should.
So in that position, how do you learn to say no? Because I have a friend of mine who was doing that same kind of doing a lot of things. She wasn't the best at saying no. How do you learn how to say no? It's what's most powerful.
Has she figured it out? Could I chat to her?
Yeah, no, I think she moved from the space.
No, I'll tell you what. You do hit a ceiling. Initially, you can't say no. Right, you have to say yes, and like I had that motto in my head. It's like big yes for everything, and it meant sometimes like you'd meet people and there was just no go forward, and you'd be like, wow, was that a good use of time? But I was almost a compulsive meter of people and networker, because some of those yeses will turn into like, oh yes, this is amazing, but then you do hit a glass ceiling of I don't have any more capacity to say yes anymore. And in the early days of entrepreneurship, like revenue is the thing that, you have to keep the wolves from the door. And so those yeses are often related to like, we need to keep this thing ticking. I think it's the stat, like 95% of businesses fail, startups fail in the first year. And so that's very real. And for people in South Africa who didn't have the experience or the credentials or the network I had when I started out, like I can imagine how unbelievably hard it is to just get through that phase. When you're through that phase and there's a bit of momentum, you need to start saying no, one, probably because you don't have capacity, and two, because you might have a little bit of the luxury of really selecting, like, I'm going to narrow in now and be more selective.
Okay, how do you change the world? Sounds like I'm Mr. Universe question here, but how do you change the world? Because for me, I think you have to be crazy enough to think you can change the world.
Yeah. Look, I'm not alone in the crusade to change the world, but it just turns out it's a bit harder than I thought.
Yeah, you have no idea. That's for me the most humbling. You realize that people are stuck in their ways.
Yeah, so In a bunch of ways. I think there's a lot of actual work I do. I work with what I believe are purpose-driven companies who are doing really impactful things.
Give us an example. Give an
So-
example. You don't
so
have,
for
you don't have to
example-
mention a name, but you just give us a kind of.
So I work with a global outsourcing company. So, like sort of call center outsourcing in its crudest terms, but it's a US-based company. They have an office here in Cape Town and Bree Street. They have offices in Mexico and the Philippines.
I love that world. I MC a lot of the end of year events.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable environment. It's a great environment to work for. Gives this young people a chance. My niece has done some of that work. It's a space that not people talk enough about.
So what's interesting about this space is actually a lot of it's shipped to the east, right? Vietnam, India, Philippines. The traditional way of doing that is incredibly exploitative of the people who work in those environments. Like they get paid very low wages, sometimes just above minimum wage, and it's the only choice they have for employment. So the founder of this company, who's an incredibly dynamic young guy, he's probably 33 now, he was like, this is wrong. I'm not going to do it this way. And so he set up this, their form of business is called ethical outsourcing, right? And they're like, we're gonna hire people from around the world, and we're gonna try and locate our offices in places that are maybe not in the big urban industrial centers, right? In the Philippines, they have an office which is almost out in the countryside. They are like the local employer. And they're going to train people. They work with Good Work Foundation and Hazy View to train people in digital skills so that once those people in local communities can graduate with those skills, they can actually internalize them into their workforce. They continue to train them, and hopefully they become data analysts or software engineers. They could go and work at Amazon later.
Yeah.
And so there's this idea that like humans matter in their work. And so they're the biggest B Corp certified ethical outsourcing company in the world. And that's their positioning. That's like, we are ethical. You can find a ton of companies who can do the same work, and you probably get great performance from them, but you don't know how they're treating your people, who effectively become your people. It's an extension of your team. And so I work with them to make that positioning compelling for customers, to make it kind of believable internally and externally, to create employee value propositions, to work with their impact team, sort of really aligning that business around this idea that all they do is around ethics. And so that's an example of one of the companies I work with. I work with some renewable energy companies on how to navigate the messaging and the branding around the just transition, which is incredibly complex. So companies in the space of ethical business that help society or help the planet, that are re-engineering the way that traditional business is done.
Ethical business and ethical treatment of the people that you employ is a lot more expensive, though. Doesn't it affect the
bottom line?
The bottom line?
So that's a hypothesis that is.
I'm just
That's the number one challenge. People are like, well, I'll
being nice is expensive.
Yeah, I'll be sustainable, but what's it going to do for my profitability?
But are your clients, the people that you're working with, the people that you employ, are they not happier? Are they not more productive when they're happier?
So that's the thing.
Like
what
happy
is
cows. The milk is so much
cows.
better. Happy cows.
So think about a lot of it's like, what's the horizon for your business? Do you want to be in business for 3 years? You probably don't care about people and their well-being if you want to be in business for 3 years, because you're going to try and grow as quickly as possible, become as profitable as possible, and then sell. If you have a long-term orientation to business, I want to be in business for 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 years. There's about 300 businesses in Japan that are over 1,000 years old.
What?
Fun fact. So think about the tradition, the honor of Japan, right? The deep sense of groundedness, right? And you bring that here where we have the opportunity to embed the values of business in a way, I think, and it's being proven now by data. So not me, but Deloitte's, EY, McKinsey's of the world are doing studies on purpose-driven businesses, and they're proving now that over the span of, and there's some studies from the early 2000s, from the span of a 10-year period, they were delivering, some of the ones who are on the S&P 500 delivered 400% higher than the benchmark of the S&P 500. So this is where the world is going, and people are now willing to pay more. Right? So if customers are going to pay more for sustainable products, they're going to be more loyal because they resonate. Everything what you're wearing today is a reflection of who you are. You've chosen it to represent you. If you believe in sustainability and ethical production, what you wear and what you eat and drink and where you go and what you do becomes an extension of who you are as a person. And that for me, like entrepreneurially, is also a choice I'm making. Like my work is who I am now.
Yeah.
It's not, and I started my career in Dubai, and that was a whole, like I had a work persona and a home persona. You know, work was absolutely go, 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 try and be as professional and global as possible. And at home, you know, I was kind of wanting to be on the beach and out having a good time. Now my interests and my work is fully aligned. I think that's huge.
How important is network to success?
There's a good friend and colleague of mine that says your network is your net worth. Yeah. And
I like that.
Yeah, it's true though.
Filthy rich.
It's
network. Filthy rich.
Well, then you've got a good network.
Yes. No. I don't mean I'm rich. I meant my network is. I have a sublime.
That's good
network.
for you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's good for you. So I tell you, it's particularly when you go out on your own and you start a business. Most often, I would say that your first customers and your first clients will be people you've either worked with, that know you, that are friends with you, and that want to support what you're doing. So that starts at you think about like ripples of impact. That's your very close network. And then you need to build out your reputation. And so I've been very active, particularly internationally, to build a network of like-minded leaders, companies, etc. And some of that means that you just have to keep showing up. You know, I've joined the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, a movement in Europe called the Be for Good Leaders, that have an incredible summit in Amsterdam every year. We represent the B Corp movement in South Africa, which is really advocating and certifying businesses that are for good businesses. That was born in the US, but now companies like Patagonia are some of the early pioneers of B Corp. And we have companies locally here, Faithful to Nature, certified last year as a B Corp. So it's not just about doing the work. It's about getting out there and advocating and involving yourself in the change, which means that you have to connect with people, be open to exchange, ideas, collaboration. In fact, with Workshop 17, we're doing a documentary screening on climate change next month. And that's absolutely a collaboration. Like no one's getting paid to do that. But what an opportunity to bring together like-minded people to engage in some incredible international content. We're streaming to the directors live from Sweden. And I think those sorts of things are important. It's not just about coming to work, as you said earlier, to do your job and go home. It's about what more could you do to create ripples of impact around your work.
Yeah. So what kind of mistakes have you made that people can learn from you, like businesses or people?
So, I mean, like there's practical things and there's life lessons. I think maybe from a life lesson perspective, I definitely grew up in the system of what success should look like. So I molded myself to like be good at school and to conform to all of these things and be good in companies and so on. And
brush your teeth every day.
Brush my teeth twice a day.
Yeah, braces.
And
no braces.
It's not no braces.
No braces.
No, I know it's unfair.
Me too.
A great smile. Got a great smile. Now you put me off my train of thought. But yeah, so
you were trying to be a good person, good student.
Yeah, and so one of the lessons I learned was like in that realm, you do lose a bit of your own self-expression and authenticity. You mute yourself down a bit, and so one of the lessons I've learned is like probably the most full version of yourself you can be is the unmuted version of yourself, what's doing the work that you want to do with people you want to do it with. Yeah. So that's like life lesson stuff. The other side is more practical, right? So I started my business 2 weeks before lockdown. I'll tell you, like, and I had some contracts and everything. Everything just was like nothing. So my billings in the first week of lockdown were like nothing. I had $500 in the bank.
Oh my! And you were married?
Yeah, I was thinking about the pressure. Kids, school.
How old are your kids?
10 and 7.
Yeah, enough to be able to, enough to tell you, Dad, you're a failure. I'm joking.
Yeah. So I know the responsibility is there, right?
Yeah, kids love you either way.
I I went, obviously had to go hard at it. So in that sense, being really good with like managing your pipeline, your finances. The interesting part of that is I think there was this whole aura of scarcity with COVID. Like everyone was like, I don't want to invest in my business. You know, we don't know what's going to happen next, which is why everyone cut their contracts, right? And then in my own right, I was like, well, I don't want to hire people and I don't want to invest too much. You know, I'm just going to have to work my way through this. And probably when I did come through it is I didn't invest enough early enough, right? So thinking about marketing, thinking about like really, you know, shining up the credentials and so on, thinking about getting additional resources and support is, you know, I waited a very long time to invest in those things. And I'm still like in a position of still going down that path now, because that sort of recurring thought of like, well, we don't know what's around the corner now. We saw what happened.
Like it was, sometimes I used to bake a lot. I'm like, oh, let me get all of this flour now. I won't be able to get flour later.
Well, it was toilet paper in the pandemic,
in the
right?
very beginning.
Yeah. So like a really good ability to like think about finances and funding if you need it. To think strategically about like in your network who can really help you. There's a lot of books that are like, write down a list of the top 25 people who you think can help you, and you need to get in front of them and build a relationship, and it's your responsibility, not theirs, to make sure that they can see value in you and make sure they can trust you and support your journey. So those things are super important to entrepreneurship. And the other thing is, I would say like resilience is a word I don't like, because it feels like you're being pushed against something, right? It's like, and it doesn't feel very life affirming. Yeah. So, but I definitely was like relentless, right? I was like, I'm not going to give up. Like self-belief, self-confidence, I'm not going to give up. And there's been a huge amount of frustration on the journey, but that's a good thing, because you're showing up and you're like, I'm still not going to give up. And if you still keep going, you will find the way. So entrepreneurship requires you to like find a way. And sometimes things are completely non-linear, and you don't end up doing the thing that you thought you were going to be doing. But it is your path. So like many people are like, what's the destination? Where am I going to get to? In entrepreneurship, the journey is the destination. And I think that's like a very rich opportunity.
So you've mentioned mistakes that you've made, but I think on the contrary, you can even say that things there's been lessons. What do you think is the best thing you've done that people can learn from? Because I think even the mistakes that you've made, you can just, put the opposite and say you can.
Yeah, I think I might have got into some lessons there.
Yeah,
but,
that's the thing.
Did I lead you into that question?
Yes,
I might have.
I got you. I'm on my toes.
Yeah. So, look, the best thing I think is authenticity. I think it's like when I put myself out there, I was like, this is what I believe in. It's amazing who resonates with you. It's amazing who wants to be part of that world. And it's probably not the people that you expected. And there's a lot of people that you don't even know who'll come through the woodwork and just be like, wow, I like what you're doing. And it's so affirming to get that, because it can be a lonely journey. So authenticity is number one thing. The second thing is walking the talk. I talk about conscious business. I have to be conscious about my own business. I talk about contribution. What contributions am I making?
Okay.
And so, for example, we give, as a startup already, I was like, well, it's 1% for the planet. So we give 1% to NGOs that are doing purpose-driven work, whether it's sustainable agriculture or skills development in communities. We have to invest as well. Okay. We have to also volunteer.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Put your money and also your time, right? So this documentary screening is a small evidence of like time, of being part of creating community around change. And maybe that leads into the last lesson, which is like your community is the thing that is going to help not just support your journey, but get you to where you want to get to.
So I can feel that you're a passionate South African, and I'm a very passionate South African, but I'm authentically passionate, and I'm all about the hard truths. I love to celebrate them, but I love to be able to go, we're messing up now, let's fix it. Everyone talks about this potential, always potential. We always talk about all these things. What do you think, what's in the future for South Africa, South Africa at the moment? What are your views on that? Because you're well-traveled. You've seen, I think a lot of the times, I love to hear views of South Africans from people who've traveled the world, have experienced people on the ground, people at the top, everyone, the nonchalance of everyone around the world. And I think it's always good to see people's views. What do you think, what's in the future for South Africa? And you can be as optimistic, as pessimistic, as honest as possible.
So I love South Africa.
Me too.
And I love the potential that this country holds.
Everyone talks about the potential.
And the reality is we're not living up to it,
no.
Right? I mean, even something as simple as like our currency is undervalued by like 50%. The Big Mac index, look it up.
Yeah. Oh yes, I've heard.
So I think we haven't scratched the potential that our diversity offers us, particularly in business. And it's not for like BEE reasons.
Yeah.
I'm saying people with different backgrounds have incredible ideas. And we need to create more space for that. I think entrepreneurship in this country could shapeshift our future. I'm I have to be optimistic, but it's like it's a requirement. But I also don't think the government they can't do it alone. Civil society can't do it. We need to connect the dots. So that's why I see businesses as like they're the connection point. They create the value in the economy that drives us forward. So big business and small business need to work together way better, like less red tape, more opportunities for small businesses and supply chain, localization, because those are the things that will allow people who are living in townships and who haven't had a shot at things to get into, let's call it the formalized economy. And just less red tape in business, like full stop, right? And some tax breaks. I know like we're struggling with tax collection, but smaller businesses where people are, potentially like just in survival mode, they should really be given a shot. And there's a responsibility on national CEOs and founders to also make sure that to be fair, our big corporates, they do a lot of good work. I'm absolutely not going to take away.
But don't they have to for tax?
Well, tax and governance, right? It's good corporate citizenship. But what I'd like to see is there's always still that sort of, it's the shareholder returns. There's quarterly reports and so on. And the more that those businesses start to fully embrace being holistic South Africans, right? So we've given them a personality. The businesses now have personalities. They must be good South Africans.
Agreed.
And I think that's going to shape the future. But I'm here. I'm part of the change. I'm helping to catalyze it in my own small way. And I think that's what's required, really, is people to be, you're a leader. I looked you up. Sorry. Of course I did. But, you're a brand, but you're also a business in your own right. And I see that you do charity work. I see you've got employment as one of your pillars on your Instagram. So I'll put that back to you. Like, why is it important to you to, in your position where you could actually just be taking all the gigs and doing all the things? Why do you look at that as an important part of what makes you up?
I think for me, it has to feel good. Like sometimes when you give a 10 Rand to someone on the side of the street, it feels good. And it's all right to do good things because it feels good. And it feels right. I was raised by a woman who was all about giving back and trying to plow back. But in the same hand, she was the first person to go, you're doing wrong. I think a lot of us need to hold ourselves accountable as a country and as a people. And I think for me, if you're making a lot of money and you're not giving back, you've failed. And that's how I see the world. And that's how I was taught to see the world. Man, very inspired. It's a pleasure. Like I get to see business so differently after chatting to you. But you said something that really triggered something. I just posted something on Instagram of young kids who couldn't cross a river when they were going to school. And I'm like, no, why don't I just go build a bridge? Because me posting on Instagram is not really helping those kids cross that river.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? Like you're a person of influence. You could go to PPC Cement and say, you know what, that's unacceptable. Like, let's go and build a bridge here. You go to the municipality.
No, agreed.
So it's connecting the dots.
Agreed.
And there's huge willingness, I think, but it takes an instigator to go and sit in front of people and say, look, if we bring these 3 or 4 parties together, we can get this thing done.
Agreed.
That's what it's going to take.
I'm inspired.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Congratulations to your dentist.
Thanks so much. It's been really
been great, man. I can feel your passion. I can feel how inspired you are to do and change things. And to think it's only been 3 years.
3 years, that's right, yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Long way to go.
Listen, for 500 Rand, that's half a Woolies packet if you had 500 Rand when you pick it.
Yeah, I had to do things quick.
That's great. Enjoy, brother. Thank you so much.
Cheers, man.